Ladies and gentlemen, when life feels hard, most people think it's a sign to stop, a sign to slow down, a sign that maybe this dream, this goal, this new version of themselves is too big. But what if the difficulty is not a stop sign? What if it's a confirmation? What if the pressure you feel is proof that you're getting closer to something that actually matters? Hard times are not stop signs. They are growth signals, even though they rarely feel that way when you're in the middle of them. When pressure shows up, most people read it as rejection, failure, or bad luck. They assume difficulty means they chose the wrong path. But challenge is often the clearest indicator that you are stretching beyond your old limits. Muscles don't grow without resistance, and character doesn't grow without friction. When life gets uncomfortable, it is usually because you are being pushed out of a smaller version of yourself into a stronger one. Think about how quickly people quit when things don't move fast enough or smoothly enough. The moment confusion appears, they retreat. The moment effort is required daily, they lose interest. But the very presence of difficulty is evidence that something meaningful is in motion. Easy tasks don't demand new habits. Easy goals don't force internal change. When the road is hard, it is demanding upgrades in your thinking, your discipline, your patience, and your emotional control. That demand is not there to block you. It is there to build you. Growth signals are rarely comfortable signals. They show up as delays that test your consistency, criticism that tests your commitment. You start learning how to work without immediate reward. You learn how to continue without applause. You learn how to hold your focus when distractions offer easier alternatives. These lessons cannot be learned in comfort. They are only developed when continuing becomes a choice instead of a feeling. Difficulty also exposes weak strategies and shallow motivations. When things are easy, almost any reason feels strong enough. When things are hard, only real purpose survives. You begin to see whether you are interested or committed. Interested people show up when it's convenient. Committed people show up when it's costly. That distinction only becomes visible under pressure. Instead of reading hardship as a message to turn back, you can train yourself to read it as a message to level up. The obstacle is not announcing your defeat. It is announcing your next requirement. It is asking for better structure, better habits, better boundaries, better focus, and stronger emotional control. And when you answer that call consistently, the same resistance that once looked like a wall starts to look more like a doorway that only opens for those willing to keep pushing, even when the progress feels slow and the effort feels heavier than expected. And the outcome is not yet visible, and the work still needs to be done tomorrow morning when you wake up and decide again to continue forward under the same weight, with a stronger mindset and a steadier pace and a deeper refusal to step back into comfort. Progress is happening even when results are invisible, and that truth is difficult to accept because people are trained to trust what they can measure quickly. You want proof, numbers, applause, visible change, and immediate feedback. When those things don't appear, the mind starts to assume nothing is working. But many of the most important changes happen beneath the surface, quietly and structurally, long before they appear externally. Just like roots grow before branches, internal shifts build before external outcomes show. Every repeated effort is leaving a mark, even if the scoreboard looks the same. Each day you practice discipline, your tolerance for discomfort increases. Each time you choose focus over distraction, your mental control strengthens. Each small correction improves your direction, even if it doesn't yet improve your position. Invisible progress is still progress because it changes the system that produces the results. You are upgrading the engine before the speed changes. People often quit during the invisible phase because it feels unrewarded. There is no celebration for resisted temptation. no audience for private study, no spotlight for consistent preparation. But unseen work compounds. Skills are forming while you feel slow. Understanding is deepening while you feel confused. Emotional stability is growing while you feel tested. What feels like stagnation is often construction happening out of sight. There is also a timing gap between cause and effect. Actions and outcomes are not always neighbors. Sometimes they are separated by weeks or months of silence. You might be planting in one season and harvesting in another. Judging the value of your effort too early creates false conclusions. It makes steady builders feel like failures and patient learners feel like they are falling behind when they are actually laying foundations that will support larger outcomes later. Invisible progress changes identity before it changes circumstance. You start reacting differently. You recover faster from setbacks. You make decisions with less fear and more clarity. These are not small upgrades. They are core rewrites of how you operate. Circumstances eventually respond to identity shifts, but identity shifts happen quietly through repetition and choice. What feels like nothing happening is often refinement happening. You are removing weak habits, adjusting priorities, sharpening awareness, strengthening follow-through. The outside world has not caught up yet, but your internal standards are rising. Your tolerance for excuses is shrinking. Your ability to act without external validation is getting stronger. And your capacity to continue without visible reward is expanding in ways that will later translate into outcomes that seem sudden to others, but are actually the delayed visibility of long invisible effort. And repeated private decisions made when nobody was watching, and no immediate evidence suggested that the work was paying off yet, and you kept moving anyway through the quiet phase where builders are separated from wishers, and where momentum is being formed underneath repeated ordinary days of effort and adjustment and continued motion without visible proof. Discipline matters more than motivation in difficult seasons, because motivation is emotional and unstable, while discipline is structural and dependable. Motivation rises when things feel exciting and new, when energy is high and the vision feels close. But difficult seasons are rarely exciting. They are repetitive, demanding, and often emotionally flat. If you rely only on motivation, your effort will rise and fall with your mood, your sleep, your circumstances, and even the weather. Discipline, on the other hand, is a decision system. It removes negotiation from action and replaces it with commitment. On hard days, you won't feel like showing up. Your mind will produce reasonable excuses, logical delays, and convincing alternatives. It will suggest waiting for a better moment, a clearer sign, a stronger feeling. Discipline answers with a schedule instead of a debate. It says the action happens because it is planned, not because it is felt. That shift from emotional permission to behavioral commitment is what keeps movement alive when enthusiasm disappears. Difficult seasons expose how unreliable feelings can be as leaders. Feelings react to discomfort by seeking relief. Discipline reacts to discomfort by seeking completion. When the task is boring, discipline continues. When progress is slow, discipline repeats. When results are late, discipline maintains the standard. This creates stability in performance, and stability in performance creates momentum, even when emotional energy is low. Discipline is also a form of self-respect. It is proof that your long-term values are stronger than your short-term impulses. Each time you follow through on a planned action, despite resistance, you strengthen your self-trust. You begin to see yourself as someone who executes, not just intends. That identity shift changes how you approach future challenges, because you carry evidence that you can act without emotional support. Motivation wants inspiration first and action second. Discipline allows action first and lets inspiration catch up later. Many breakthroughs happen after movement begins, not before. The act of starting often creates the clarity and energy people were waiting to feel. Discipline understands that motion generates emotion more reliably than emotion generates motion. In prolonged difficulty, routines become lifelines. Simple, repeated behaviors, waking at a set time, doing the next defined task, finishing small commitments, keep your direction stable when your confidence fluctuates. You reduce the number of daily decisions and increase the number of automatic executions. That protects your progress from emotional weather and mental fatigue and distraction, and the constant internal bargaining that tries to trade long-term gain for short-term comfort and immediate relief, and delay disguised as preparation and hesitation. Disguised as caution and waiting, disguised as strategy, while the disciplined path keeps moving through repetition and structure and pre-decided action patterns that continue operating whether the mood is supportive or not, and whether the excitement returns today or later or much further down the road, where consistency has already built strength before feelings fully agree with the mission in front of you. Struggle prepares you for the responsibility you ask for, even when it feels unrelated and unfair in the moment. Most people pray for bigger opportunities, greater influence, more income, stronger relationships, or higher impact. But they underestimate the internal capacity required to hold those things without collapsing under the weight. Responsibility is heavier than desire. It demands emotional control, decision clarity, endurance, and patience under pressure. Struggle is the training ground where those capacities are built through repeated exposure to difficulty. When challenges pile up, you are being stretched in areas that comfort never develops. You learn how to make decisions when outcomes are uncertain. You learn how to continue performing when emotions are unsettled. You learn how to solve problems instead of avoiding them. These are not side skills. They are core leadership muscles. Without them, success becomes fragile and easily lost. With them, success becomes sustainable because your inner structure can support your outer growth. Responsibility also multiplies consequences. Bigger roles mean your choices affect more people and last longer. Struggle teaches you to slow down your reactions and strengthen your judgment. It forces you to think beyond impulse and beyond ego. When things go wrong and you cannot escape the results, you begin developing accountability. You stop blaming conditions and start adjusting behavior. That shift is essential for handling larger assignments where excuses create damage instead of relief. Pressure reveals emotional weaknesses that would remain hidden in ease. Impatience, avoidance, inconsistency, poor boundaries, and fragile focus surface when demands increase. This exposure is not punishment. It is diagnosis. You cannot strengthen what you cannot see. Struggle brings weaknesses into view so they can be trained into strengths through repetition and correction. Each hard moment becomes a rehearsal for a future moment with higher stakes. There is also a stamina component to responsibility. Larger goals require longer consistency. Struggle lengthens your endurance by forcing you to operate without quick wins. You build the ability to stay engaged across long timelines, to keep standards steady without constant reward. That endurance is what prevents burnout when opportunity finally expands and demands sustained output instead of short bursts. Many people receive opportunity before preparation and lose it through poor reactions, unmanaged stress, or inconsistent execution. Struggle reduces that risk by toughening your habits and stabilizing your mindset ahead of expansion. It increases your tolerance for complexity and uncertainty and competing demands and delayed outcomes and criticism and unexpected change and heavy decision loads and interpersonal tension and repeated problem solving so that when the responsibility you once wanted finally arrives, it does not feel shocking or overwhelming or paralyzing, but familiar in weight and rhythm and demand because you have already been carrying smaller versions of that load repeatedly and adjusting your posture and strengthening your grip and increasing your balance under pressure without fully realizing that the training has been shaping you for the scale of duty you once said you were ready to handle and asked to receive. Keep moving forward. Slow progress still changes your life, even when your mind tries to dismiss it because it looks too small to matter. People often underestimate the power of gradual movement because they are trained to celebrate big leaps and fast wins. But real transformation is usually built through steady, repeated, ordinary actions that don't look impressive day to day. The small step you take consistently has more long-term impact than the giant step you take once and never repeat. Slow progress builds depth. Fast progress often builds excitement, but slow progress builds stability. When you move slowly, you are forced to understand what you are doing, adjust your method, and strengthen your habits. You learn the process instead of just chasing the outcome. That process knowledge becomes a permanent asset. It stays with you even if conditions change, even if you have to rebuild, even if you have to start again from a different position. There is also less emotional drama in slow progress, and that is an advantage. Dramatic change attracts attention, but also pressure and expectation. Gradual improvement gives you space to grow without noise. You get to refine quietly. You get to make mistakes without quitting. You get to correct your direction before the cost becomes too high.